Hey, this is Senator Justin Reedy coming to you from Annapolis at the end of week 13, the last full week of the General Assembly session. We will be going in on Monday for pretty much the whole day, all the way through midnight, off and on the floor. So we'll have one more full day. We may also be in tomorrow in the Senate as well on Saturday. This week has been so full of activity that it's hard to summarize. Sometimes it feels like something happened 3 weeks ago and it was earlier this week. Both the Senate and the House have now passed the comprehensive state operating budget and the BRFA, which includes $1.6 billion combined in new taxes, new or raised taxes. It's the largest tax increase combined in the history of the state of Maryland. There are some differences in the two versions, and so probably tonight, Friday night, or possibly tomorrow, we will be doing a final vote on what's called the concurrence, which means the final package that's agreed upon between the two houses, and it's still going to contain the largest tax increase in state history. There was a few little amendments and tweaks we were able to make that were mildly positive, for example, that are creating a new $5 tax per tire. But the amendment we got makes sure that money at least goes to roads and bridges and not just the general fund. But that's not exactly, great as far as a victory. I will say there's been a lot of confusion. They're passing this 3% tech tax, IT and tech services tax. Privately, they're still figuring out exactly what all is covered and what's not on this 3% tax. The computer services and these different codes in the federal law that govern what a computer service is are very broad. So it's sort of interesting. There's still a little bit of uncertainty about all of that. So it just goes to show you how thrown together this was, desperate to find revenue from your pocket instead of making the real substantive cuts to state government that we proposed. Our Senate Republicans put together an omnibus amendment that would have cut out basically $1.6 billion in spending so that we would not have to raise the $1.6 billion in taxes. And it included things as simple as freezing hiring and getting rid of employee raises this year. It also included some tougher things like changing how we calculate Medicaid eligibility for people who are over 250% of the poverty level. It means you have to take some benefits away from people who are not in the poverty area but do get Medicaid benefits. It's never easy to take something away, but that would have to be part of a solution. There was a number of other things that part of that amendment. That amendment failed. We did get a few Democrats to vote with us on it, but it failed on a largely party line vote. And I also offered an amendment to say, well, let's have every agency go cut 5% from their budget. If every agency cut 5% from their budget, that would actually save several $100 million, which would have allowed to at least get rid of some of the tax increases. That amendment was rejected. We offered a number of other amendments as well that were rejected. So it looks like we are going to get this large tax increase, and I think that people need to understand that when you have a General Assembly, Governor Moore has pushed this as well, and he should not be absolved of blame, but you also have a General Assembly that for years and years and years, even under Governor Hogan, kept trying to push through things that mandate spending in future years and kept pushing things that make it harder to grow jobs in the state. And so now we're left with a situation where the state has mismanaged money, but also the specter of more cuts coming from the federal level means that they're now saying we could be in a big mess even moving forward. And so they're trying to blame the budget deficit on Donald Trump. They tried to blame it on Larry Hogan first, which didn't make any sense because he left a big surplus. Then they're trying to blame it on Donald Trump, but we had a massive deficit before Trump ever took office. So it just doesn't make sense. So I'm obviously going to be speaking and fighting against the final concurrence of these tax increases. Marylanders need to understand General Assembly has tremendous power. And so it's important in elections that are coming up in 2026 to take action and know who your state delegates and state senators are and who's running, because that they really matter. Most of the news you hear about is about Washington, D.C., but who is your state folks affects your life more directly than I think most people realize. We also had a bill about a bad crime bill that did pass, although we got some amendments on it to make some exceptions, but a bill about letting anybody who serves more than 20 years of their sentence, unless they are rapist, sex offender, I got that amendment last year by one vote on the Senate floor, or if they've killed a first responder in duty, or if they're in life with prison without the possibility of parole. Those people can't get this second look, but this is called a second look for anybody that served 20 years or more. Even if they've been turned down parole, they can petition a judge to take a second look at their sentence if they were sentenced when they were 18 to 25. So it's a lot of, the only people that this fits are people who've committed very serious, very bad crimes. And this would drag victims' families through other court proceedings. We fought that bill very hard. We did amend it somewhat, as I said, but it still did pass. It's going to the governor's desk. And you know, it's another example. We've passed some good bills this year on anti-crime bills. For a change, we've actually passed some good anti-crime bills, which I've mentioned before this year, that are getting through, including my bill about making the theft and trafficking of a stolen firearm a felony. But then you have this garbage. So it's been frustrating. And here in the final, 72 to 96 hours of session, there are massive policy bills that are all of a sudden coming out of the House of Delegates over to the Senate about energy, about housing regulations, and other things. And they're all getting dumped. Massive bills that have been heavily amended. So we're trying to slow that process down and say, look, you can't make these major policy decisions at the last minute. Some of the bills actually that are being dumped on us, some of the things in them actually aren't bad. There's one bill about nuclear power that's coming over from the House that I actually think is overall a pretty good bill, but it's dozens of pages with all kinds of amendments, and you have to. So we're actually scrambling as we speak. It's going to be very busy here for the rest of today on Friday, all the way through the weekend and Monday. But when the clock strikes midnight on Monday, the session ends and everything dies that hasn't passed. And so we looked at that clock as something we can do as Republicans to slow things down, try to keep some things from getting through that are not positive. And so anyway, that was a lot to tell you. Just kind of, there's been several developments on a number of issues. We're going to do a full session breakdown once we get out of session Monday and get that out to people. But I look forward to keeping you updated. You know, it's been a very tough session. It's been a very tough session. I have fought every second that I could to try to keep us from having our taxes raised and other bad policies and trying to get good things through. So we're going to continue doing all the way through the finish line. Please reach out to me with any questions or concerns, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.